How childish can you get, huh? You wouldn't hit a guy with glasses on, would you? Huh?
After that line, Batman throws a powerful punch and knocks him out. It's my favourite moment of the fight. In that instant, Batman tells us exactly who he is. No negotiation, no moral lecture. This is Batman from a darker world, where fear is a tool and justice doesn't need to be loved. But what keeps drawing me back to Batman after all these years is the chill that comes when I realise this film was never really about a superhero. Did you know the role of Batman once sparked a cultural riot, with tens of thousands of protest letters sent in simply because the lead actor had a background in comedy? That the Joker wasn't just a villain, but the true centre of power in the entire film, from screen time to behind-the-scenes contracts. And that Batman himself, the protagonist, was bound inside a suit so restrictive it was almost a prison. Below are 20 behind-the-scenes facts that turned Batman 1989 into a far darker and bolder film than most people realise. Michael Keaton, the casting choice that caused an uproar and a very Batman kind of fear. As a child, I never cared who played Batman. In my memory, Batman was simply Batman. A figure standing on a rooftop, grim, silent, distant. It wasn't until many years later, rereading old articles and hearing behind-the-scenes stories, that I realised this. Before becoming iconic, Michael Keaton was considered an unforgivable mistake. In 1988, when Warner Brothers announced Michael Keaton as Batman, the fan reaction wasn't debate, it was revolt. More than 50,000 protest letters were sent to the studio demanding a recast. The Wall Street Journal reported it as a cultural crisis, where casting a comic book character was treated with the same gravity as politics. To the public at the time, Batman had to be Mel Gibson, had to be Harrison Ford, men with action credibility, muscles, and the look of a traditional hero. Michael Keaton was none of that. He was a comedian, Beetlejuice, Mr. Mum, and to many, that meant Batman would once again become a joke straight out of the 1960s. Tim Burton saw something else. He believed Batman didn't need a massive physique, but a fractured inner life. A man living with trauma, obsession, and isolation. Burton publicly defended Keaton, arguing that the role required subtlety, not brute strength. In the end, to calm the backlash, the studio took a risky step. They released a rushed trailer with no music at all, just images, shadows, and the film's tone. And something unexpected happened. It worked. Fan attitudes began to shift. When Batman 1989 premiered, all doubts collapsed. Michael Keaton wasn't just accepted, he was celebrated. For many, Keaton became the definitive Batman. 19, Jack Nicholson, one Joker smile, one enormous fortune. Did you ever feel that the Joker dominates Batman 1989? That strange sense of overwhelming presence? I only understood later. It wasn't just the script, it was the contract. Jack Nicholson was the studio's first choice for the Joker. Although names like Robin Williams and David Bowie were considered, Warner Brothers knew they needed a star powerful enough to reassure both the studio and the audience. Nicholson agreed, but not on Hollywood's usual terms. Instead of a fixed salary, Nicholson demanded a percentage of the film's gross profits, not just box office, but merchandise, toys, t-shirts, posters, anything bearing the Joker's image. At the time, it seemed risky. In hindsight, it was genius. Batman 1989 alone earned Nicholson an estimated $60 million. Producer Peter Guber later admitted that when they signed the deal, they had no idea merchandising would explode on that scale. Nicholson's lawyers went even further, inserting clauses that granted him profit participation in later Batman films, even those in which he didn't appear. The Joker became a long-term passive income stream that lasted more than a decade. This moment changed Hollywood. It proved that real power doesn't lie in a fixed paycheck, but in back-end profits. Stars who followed, from Tom Cruise to Will Smith, learned from this model. And if you re-watch Batman 1989 and notice how the Joker dominates the screen and your memory, understand this: it's not just art, it's money at work. 18. The Joker, the film's most lucid madman. Jack Nicholson once said of the role, "What I like about the Joker is that his sense of humour is completely tasteless." He later admitted it was one of his favourite performances. Indeed, Nicholson's Joker is often remembered as pure madness. But look closely, and you'll see this is actually one of the most clear-headed Jokers ever put on screen. He doesn't lose control. He performs. The Joker in Batman 1989 is a narcissist who craves being seen, noticed, made the centre of attention. His madness isn't pathological, it's theatrical. He laughs on cue, poses for the camera, and savours every second he stands on the stage of chaos he's created. That's why the Joker's face is essentially a permanent mask. The white skin and frozen grin aren't a curse, they're a license. They give him a socially acceptable excuse to be a monster without hiding it. Acid didn't create the Joker. It merely gave him the face that matched what was already inside. And then there's the most controversial change. In Batman 1989, the Joker is the one who kills Bruce Wayne's parents. Tim Burton deliberately breaks from the Joe Chill canon to forge a more extreme personal connection. Here, Batman and Joker don't just oppose each other. They are born from the same tragedy. One chooses discipline to control pain. The other chooses chaos to glorify it. The Joker isn't just a villain. He is the question Batman never wants to answer. If he had chosen a different path, who might Bruce Wayne have become? 17. Building the myth of Gotham when the city becomes the threat. When you think back on Gotham in Batman 1989, what do you remember? For me, it's a feeling. A heavy, suffocating sense that the city isn't meant for humans. I later learned this wasn't accidental, but the absolute intention of production designer Anton Furst. Furst didn't build Gotham as a location. Across 18 sound stages at Pinewood Studios, at a cost of over $5.5 million for sets alone, a staggering figure in the late 1980s, he constructed a city that doesn't exist, yet feels terrifyingly real. Instead of studying maps or urban planning, Furst drew inspiration from fascist architecture, German expressionism, and decaying industrial cities. His goal wasn't geographic logic, but psychological pressure. The streets were built at full scale, complete with working sewers, real electrical systems, and 3-story facades you could actually walk into. Gotham wasn't a painted backdrop, it was a massive machine in operation. Warner Brothers objected to the budget, suggesting exterior shoots in New York or Chicago. Tim Burton flatly refused. To him, Gotham had to be a character, not a setting. The result was a city with no friendly buildings. Everything is too tall, too dark, too cramped, constantly crushing the people who live there. Furst's design won an Oscar, but more importantly, it laid the foundation for how cinema would later portray superheroes. The world itself can be the villain. 16. Batman barely speaks, and that's what makes him terrifying. When I first watched Batman 1989, I didn't notice how much Batman talked. I only remembered that he barely spoke at all. There was just the presence, and then the violence. This was no accident. Michael Keaton's Batman has noticeably fewer lines than Jack Nicholson's Joker, and that was a deliberate choice. Tim Burton believed that the less Batman spoke, the more frightening he became. Screenwriters Sam Hamm and Warren Scarron stripped Batman's dialogue down to a minimum, placing their trust in Keaton's body language and in silence. To Burton, Batman wasn't a hero who inspired through words. He didn't need to explain who he was or why he did what he did. His presence was enough. Some Warner Brothers executives were unhappy. They wanted heroic one-liners, moments the audience could applaud. Burton went in the opposite direction. Batman doesn't chat, doesn't debate, and isn't even particularly warm with his allies. He appears, acts, and disappears. His language is darkness, punches, and fear. When Batman does speak, each line is short and cold, more a threat than a conversation. This decision had lasting influence. It paved the way for the brooding, taciturn, psychologically heavy superheroes that would dominate cinema decades later. Fifth in the Batman suit, Michael Keaton's rubber prison. When we look at Batman, we see a solid, immovable figure, like a living statue. Inside the suit, however, the reality was very different. Michael Keaton could barely move. The Batman suit was made of foam latex and fiberglass, prioritizing gothic aesthetics over practicality. Peripheral vision was severely restricted, leaving Keaton almost blind during action scenes. Most importantly, he couldn't turn his head. Whenever Batman needed to look to the side, Keaton had to rotate his entire body, and this limitation accidentally created one of Batman's most iconic physical traits. The suit trapped heat mercilessly and had no ventilation system. Keaton lost around 8 pounds during filming due to dehydration and exhaustion. The crew had to stop every 20 minutes just to remove the cowl so he could cool down. Keaton even admitted he sometimes urinated in the suit because taking it off took 15 minutes and required 3 people. Rather than treating this as a problem, Tim Burton turned it into a style. He filmed Batman in wide, static shots, letting immobility become a source of menace. Batman isn't fast or agile, and he doesn't need to be. His weight and slowness make every step feel like fate advancing. The suit didn't just restrict Keaton, it defined Batman's entire physical language. 14. The Joker's smile. How performance survived under a mask. How many people here are still haunted by the Joker's smile? To create that permanent grin, the makeup team applied multiple layers of prosthetics, taking roughly 2 hours each day. Makeup designer Nick Dudman combined artificial scarring with theatrical makeup, carefully avoiding any permanent alteration to Jack Nicholson's face. Nicholson's contract allowed him to remove his makeup and leave the set at 6 p.m, regardless of filming progress. This forced the crew to prioritize Joker scenes and forced Dudman to develop materials flexible enough to preserve Nicholson's micro-expressions. The raised eyebrow, the off-kilter gaze, the warped but intentional smile. The result was one of the most unsettling makeup achievements in film history. A face that appears frozen, yet moves constantly at a subtle level. The Joker can laugh, grimace, rage, and revel, all beneath a smile that never disappears. It's a technical solution that allowed acting to survive under extreme constraint, and it's why Nicholson's Joker still makes audiences uneasy to this day. 13. Batman flying across the moon, a legend born late. Some cinematic images feel as if they've always existed. Batman gliding across the moon in Batman 1989 is one of them. It's so perfect, so iconic, that it's hard to believe it wasn't part of the original plan. After test screenings, audiences responded that they wanted a clearer symbolic image, a moment that would permanently stamp Batman into the public imagination. And so the effects team, led by Derek Meddings, was given an urgent task: create an image that was both simple and mythical. The filmmakers chose not to use CGI or digital effects. The Batwing was built as a miniature model and filmed like a real movie scene, with carefully calculated lighting, composition, and movement. Gotham's sky behind it was created using hand-painted matte art, layered to produce depth. Compositing the Batwing against the skyline was a technical nightmare. Every cable had to be rotoscoped out frame by frame, a ludicrous amount of work for a shot lasting only seconds. But that obsession with detail is what gives the scene its razor-sharp, almost unreal clarity. The irony is that this last-minute addition became the most commercially exploited image of the entire film. Posters, t-shirts, toys, logos, everything ultimately returned to the silhouette of a bat stamped across the moon. 12. Robin Williams, the almost Joker, and a very real wound. Robin Williams was a name that always made people smile. But behind that smile lies a rather sad behind-the-scenes story from Batman, 1989. While Jack Nicholson was still hesitating over the role of the Joker, Warner Brothers approached Robin Williams as a backup option. Williams was enthusiastic. He wanted to play the Joker. He wanted to step into that dark world. Then Hollywood played a familiar card. The producers went back to Nicholson and told him that if he declined, Robin Williams would take the role. Nicholson agreed immediately. Williams was dropped. The issue wasn't just losing the part. Williams felt he had been used as a bargaining chip, a decoy, a name deployed to pressure someone else. The wound ran deep. He not only turned down the role of the Riddler in Batman Forever, 1995, but also severed ties with Warner Brothers for many years. It wasn't until Father's Day, 1997, after the studio formally apologized, that Williams agreed to work with them again. A belated reconciliation for a very human disappointment. 11. I'm Batman, a line born from instinct.
Friends about me.
What are you?
I'm Batman.
The line, I'm Batman, now sounds inevitable. But in the original script, Batman never said it. The original line was, I am the Knight. Mythic, yes, but also wordy. During filming, Michael Keaton felt it didn't fit. Not the rhythm of the scene, not the version of Batman he was building. So Keaton did something very simple. He suggested changing it to I'm Batman. A blunt declaration. Tim Burton agreed. And that moment became one of the most iconic lines in film history. Interestingly, I am the Knight didn't disappear. It was preserved and expanded into the legendary line from Batman, the animated series, 1992.
I am vengeance. I am the Knight.
I am vengeance. I am the Knight. That series was directly influenced by Batman 1989 and even reused Danny Elfman's music. A discarded line outlived the original film. And it all began with an actor's instinct, understanding that Batman doesn't need many words to exist. 10. Vicki Vale, a character born of contract obligations. When watching Batman 1989, the relationship between Bruce Wayne and Vicki Vale often feels slightly offbeat. As it turns out, that feeling isn't accidental. Originally, the role of Vicki Vale belonged to Sean Young. She had completed costume tests and rehearsals. But just weeks before filming began, Young was injured in a horseback riding accident and broke her collarbone. The role had to be recast urgently. Kim Basinger accepted almost immediately, but entered the film with virtually no preparation time. As a result, the romantic arc was built directly on set, relying on spontaneous reactions and genuine emotion. Tim Burton later admitted that the romance was the film's weakest element. It existed not out of creative necessity, but contractual requirement. Batman needed a female lead. Still, that lack of preparation produced something unexpectedly real. The chemistry between Basinger and Keaton feels sincere, but awkward. 9. When toys beat the box office. As a child, I remember Batman being everywhere. On t-shirts, pencil cases, backpacks, plastic figures, even breakfast cereal. Back then I thought, the movie's popular, so the merchandise sells. The truth was the opposite. The merchandise was what truly dominated Batman, 1989. After the film's release, Warner Brothers realized something shocking. Batman toys, logos, and clothing generated more revenue than the box office itself. More importantly, they discovered a rule Hollywood had never fully acknowledged: villains sell better than heroes. Joker merchandise vastly outsold Batman's. Audiences didn't just want to watch the Joker, they wanted to become him. Purple suits, white faces, crooked smiles, Joker cards, every detail translated effortlessly into products. From that moment on, studio thinking began to change. Films were no longer designed around story alone, but increasingly around moments that could be sold. 8. The censorship tug-of-war, Batman almost became an R-rated film. Today, a PG-13 superhero movie feels inevitable. But in 1989, there was no modern precedent for the MPAA to compare Batman to, and that turned the ratings process into a prolonged struggle. Batman, 1989, blended noir aesthetics, violence, and dark psychology. The MPAA repeatedly considered an R rating, a commercial death sentence at the time. The scene that caused Burton the most trouble was the Joker's death. Originally, the fall and impact were shown more explicitly. The MPAA deemed it too brutal, forcing Burton to cut away before the moment of impact. Internationally, matters were even more tense. Several countries demanded additional cuts to scenes of Joker's violence toward women. What audiences see today is already a softened version of Burton's original intent. 7. The Batmobile, an iconic machine with serious problems. The Batmobile, in Batman, 1989, looks like a living creature, long, low, jet black, emerging from the shadows like a predatory beast. Behind that perfect exterior, however, lies a blunt truth. The Batmobile was extremely difficult to use. Built on an extended Chevrolet Impala chassis nearly 6 meters long, the car was unwieldy on Gotham's narrow streets. It frequently malfunctioned, was hard to control, and made complex chase sequences almost impossible. As a result, the crew had to rewrite many action scenes to match what the car could actually do. Michael Keaton never drove the Batmobile in the film. All moving shots were performed by stunt drivers. Keaton only sat in a stationary cockpit for close-ups. The rear jet engine used real flames, requiring firefighters to be on standby for every take. The Batmobile's first appearance alone cost $27,000 in smoke machine expenses, for a shot lasting under 10 seconds. Extravagant, wasteful, and unmistakably a visual statement. 6. Nicholson's Joker, when the script was only a suggestion. There's something uncanny about Jack Nicholson's Joker. You never know what he's going to do next. Not because the script is unpredictable, but because Nicholson's performance is always one step ahead of it. During the filming of Batman, 1989, Nicholson improvised constantly. Tim Burton didn't just allow this, he encouraged it. Burton understood that Nicholson's acting instincts couldn't be boxed in. The Joker shouldn't be predictable, and the best way to ensure that was to let the actor himself operate outside a rigid plan. Many of the most memorable lines and moments, especially during the parade scenes, were ad-libbed. These seemingly spontaneous choices gave the Joker a unique rhythm, sometimes slow and indulgent, as if savouring his own performance, sometimes explosively sudden. That's what makes the Joker feel alive and uncontainable, as though he's inventing his next move right in front of you. 5. Batman, 1989, and the moment superheroes grew up. Before Batman, 1989, superhero films were generally light, bright, and safe. Heroes were clearly good. Villains were simple. Pain was just motivation, not a lasting wound. Tim Burton's Batman shattered that expectation. For the first time, a superhero film was built around psychological trauma. Bruce Wayne doesn't just lose his parents, he lives with that loss every day. Christopher Nolan later openly acknowledged that he drew direct inspiration from Burton's Batman. Not in visual style, but in how the character was treated, seriously, psychologically, and without fear of darkness. Batman, 1989, proved that audiences were ready for heroes who were flawed, somber, and not easy to love. It opened the door to a generation of darker, deeper, and more ambitious superhero films. 4. When Batman almost became a joke again. It sounds like a punchline now, but in the late 1970s and early 1980s, this was a serious proposal. Warner Brothers once discussed bringing Batman back as a comedy. The idea? Bill Murray as Batman, Eddie Murphy as Robin. Yes, really, a sarcastic, self-aware Batman, a fast-talking, chaotic Robin. A film leaning fully into comedy, continuing the campy spirit of the 1960s. Then, Tim Burton arrived. He didn't just bring a style, he brought a firm refusal. Batman should never be a joke again. If that decision had gone the other way, the history of Batman, and perhaps of superhero cinema itself, might have taken a completely different path. 3. When Batman conquered the world. Some summers are more than entertainment, they become atmosphere. The summer of 1989 was one of them. Batman didn't just hit theatres, it covered everything. Released in June 1989, Batman grossed $411 million on a budget of just $48 million. It even outperformed Ghostbusters 2, the film most people at the time expected to dominate the box office. Batman didn't merely win, it crushed the competition. Not everyone was pleased. Some critics questioned the dark tone, some comic fans disliked the story changes, but what mattered more was this: general audiences and children loved it. Batman, 1989 didn't need unanimous approval. It only needed to be impossible to look away from. 2. Batman, 1989 and the indirect road to the MCU. When we look back at superhero film history, we usually start with Iron Man in 2008, but go a little further back, and there's an often overlooked link. Batman, 1989. As Batman toys, t-shirts and logos flooded the market, one of the companies that benefited most was Toy Biz. And behind Toy Biz stood a name that would later become hugely important: Ike Perlmutter. Thanks to the revenue and credibility generated during the Batman boom, Perlmutter gained the momentum for a pivotal deal. In 1993, he acquired Marvel's merchandising rights when the company was on the brink of bankruptcy. Toys, figures, and licensed products, the very machine that had powered Batman, were now applied to Spider-Man, the X-Men, and more. It didn't happen overnight, but from those foundations, Marvel slowly recovered. Years later, the Marvel film era exploded into what we now call the Marvel Cinematic Universe. When Batman almost went into outer space, hard to believe, but at one point Batman nearly became an astronaut. In the 1970s, Batman's popularity had collapsed. The cheerful 1960s TV series was long gone, and superheroes were widely seen as outdated nostalgia. In that context, CBS once floated the idea of a film where Batman and Robin would travel into space, a move that was both bizarre and very 1970s. Then the world shifted. In the late 1970s, Superman, the movie, premiered and became a massive success. It proved that superheroes could be treated seriously, with heart, intelligence, and respect for the characters. A new era began, and so the idea of Batman in outer space was shelved permanently. Batman, 1989, changed how Hollywood viewed superheroes, how audiences embraced darkness, and, through a very long domino chain, even helped shape the future MCU era. It stands as proof that popular cinema can still be auteur-driven, unsettling, and enduring long after the theatre lights go out. More than 30 years later, we still return to this film, not just for nostalgia, but because it holds up. It still has personality. It still feels unlike anything else. If you've stayed with me this far, tell me, Which detail from Batman 1989 surprised you the most? And if we were to continue this format with another film, which legend should we revisit next? Leave a comment below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so we can meet again in future videos.